It is mock draft season. We are right in the thick of rookie hype section of the calendar, so I've assembled some of the brightest and best minds in fantasy football to take a look at how these rookies are being valued across the industry. As always, we've got Rich Cooling here, who you know from the Fantasy Sanctuary work along with writing for DLF. But the headlines, there are two guests tonight. We've got Russ Fisher, who you should know as Dynasty Outhouse on Twitter, host of the excellent Trade Addicts pod with one of the best intro musics out there, podcast director for DLF. Russ, how you doing? You surviving this kind of crazy time of the year?
Oh, I thrive in this crazy time of the year. Points are a distraction.
And secondly, we've got Andrew Erickson of FantasyPros. You should know him as Andrew Erickson _ on Twitter. Andrew deals with all aspects of fantasy football. One simple goal: help you get better at fantasy football. Makes some incredible threads during the season of the off season. Andrew, you just dropped your mock draft 3.0. But big question, do you prefer in-season content or do you prefer this time of year when the content's thick and fast in a whole different way?
It's a loaded question. I think that this content this time of year is more about what you actually want to do, because you can kind of pick and choose a little bit. You know, it's not I got to get the waiver wire piece out now or else we're not going to get the clicks. So, yeah, I would say that, you know, there's more passion, I think, for people that are invested in fantasy football right now. Like the diehards are tuning in right now versus during the season where it's like Joe Schmo's sliding into your DMs and you're like, hey man, who do I pick up for week 6? And then you'll never hear from them ever again because you'll get you'll pick the wrong guy. And then, you know, there's more love here at this time of year. So it depends on, I would probably say right now.
Brilliant. Right. So the way this is going to work, we're going to go a couple of rounds through this mock. Superflex, tight end premium. Russ is picking first, then Andrew, then Rich. We'll keep rolling with me throwing out questions now and again. You guys butt in whenever you've got a comment or you really feel like one of these picks is awful. Russ, you're first with the 101, and I think many in the Dynasty community have penciled Bijan Robinson in for quite a while now, but the closer we get, do you feel like there's a lot of these teams who are going to end up picking 101 who probably aren't a running back away? How steadfast are you in Bijan? Do you think that it's easy to make an argument for the quarterback, or is it just you've just got to smash Bijan and just deal with the fallout later if you needed a quarterback?
See, here's the thing. The 101 as of right now, it's really all you can do. All you can say is as of right now, before we learn landing spots before, like if Bijan falls to the 3rd round, maybe he's not the 101 anymore. But, you know, as of right now, he absolutely is to me, like without a question. This is Zeke, Saquon level, you know, first round of a startup. I'm doing a startup right now where I did a mock and a startup where both in the exact same spot at the 111, Bijan went. You know, right after Chase, Jefferson, running back 1, you know, there goes Bijan. So I think right now Bijan is absolutely the answer. At this point, after what Richardson did in the combine, if he gets taken like 1 or 2 overall, that might push people to take him first. And I get it because the upside is there. I don't really believe in that. Like, to me, the answer is Bijan or trade back. And if you can't trade back, you draft Bijan because you can trade him later. So, like, unfortunately, like you said before, if you earned the 101, you really don't necessarily want Bijan because you're probably not a running back away, you know? Yeah. So, but even still, like, you can't just give up that much value. Like, you're a startup, like right now, it's the easiest way to describe value. You're giving up 2 rounds worth of value, like at least a solid round and a half. Like draft value, trade for need. Like that's just what it comes down to. Bijan's the answer for now.
Okay, brilliant. So we've got Bijan in there. Andrew, with all due respect to Bijan, this is where mock drafts tend to get a little more interesting, as it feels like you can go a bunch of different ways. I mean, you know, the wide receivers aren't quite to the level of Ja'Marr Chase or Justin Jefferson, but there's some really interesting quarterbacks there. I know in your latest mock for FantasyPros, which is in the comments below, you have Bryce Young as your QB1. Is he the choice here, and how close is it between him and your QB2?
No, Bryce Young will not be my selection here. And shout out to you for giving me the number 2 pick. You know, I of course, I got to come in here with making the tough decisions. Didn't get the chance to take Bijan, but I'm going to go with CJ Stroud here. And I think that the conversation about upside is we beat it so hard every year when we talk about fantasy, upside. But in a Superflex format where you have to start two quarterbacks, I think that having a quarterback with a semblance of a floor actually does matter. Like if it's a one quarterback league, I'm going all upside all the time. I don't care because I can just find somebody to play one week or another. But two quarterback leagues, like it's so easy to pinpoint the teams that suck because they're the teams that don't have quarterbacks. Like Anthony Richardson might not even play. He might not be a starter this year, where CJ Stroud, to me, is the most NFL ready pocket passer. Don't have question marks about his size, weight, whatever. Like he's going to come in and he's going to get the ball to his playmakers and be productive. So for me, that's why I value Stroud just one spot ahead of Anthony Richardson here. It's why I want to take him number 2, because he's going to be a long-time starter in the NFL. Like I have no doubt in my mind that he's the best pure pocket passer, and there may be room for him to grow athletically. Like we did see it in that one game where, he's making plays with his feet a little bit more. So if that becomes part of his game at the next level, which we haven't really seen yet, then he also does have a high ceiling, but he also has a much higher floor, in my opinion, than Anthony Richardson. And I just don't think that's valued enough in Superflex formats where you have to start two quarterbacks. And it's okay if one of them just is starting 16 games and is finishing every week QB 10, QB 9, QB 8. Like that's helpful. Versus Richardson, he could be giving you zeros because he's not doing anything. Or he totally flames out and you took him with the second pick overall in your rookie draft and now you're left with nothing. So that's my long spiel about Stroud over Richardson.
No, good stuff. Rich, we've kept you quiet long enough, 6 minutes into the show, and you're yet to say a word. I know you've been in the lab grinding out the second edition of your rookie guide that comes out tomorrow. So post-combine, did anything change in your rookie model that would have you making a different pick here at the 103?
Nothing particularly post-combine, but I've gone away and I've really thought about this. And I think it's really interesting, both for us and Andrew saying about Richardson's the kind of upside play. And I actually think that Richardson is the floor play. Now, I've had some pushback on people saying this. So the reason I think this is that Richardson as a mid to late first round pick in the NFL is probably going to sit for at least 1 year, if not 2 years. I think the hype and the kind of projections since the combine is that he's getting pushed up into that top 10, potentially even, top 4. Now, if that happens, he's seeing the field year 1. There is no way that any team's drafting him in the top 10 and he's not seeing the field. Even if he goes to Detroit behind Jared Goff, I think that there's going to be an opportunity where he will get on the field. Now, yes, I get the argument that the rushing production is kind of the upside. That's the sexy bit. But actually, if you think about it, if he gets that elite draft capital, he's going to get on the field and he's going to be given at least 2 years, if not 3 years, as a starter in the NFL. Now, the rushing production to me means that he is going to be fantasy relevant as a starting quarterback the second he starts. Now, if take a hypothetical, for example, if week 1 in the NFL season, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Will Levis are all starting for their NFL teams, there's only one quarterback there that I'm comfortable starting week 1. And that's Anthony Richardson, because I think that he's going to have the rushing floor that means no matter what happens, he's going to be fantasy relevant. Whereas I think Bryce Young, CJ Stroud are far superior passers and pocket passers, but they are going to need some time to embed at the NFL level, and they're not going to be fantasy relevant from day 1. So yes, Richardson is absolutely riskier because he doesn't have that passing kind of to fall back on. But I think from a fantasy perspective, for me, there is a higher floor there.
I think it's a really interesting one. I think we're going to see a lot of debates about it and a big variance on where he's picked in rookie drafts because of it. Right, so moving on to the 104. Back to Russ. So you have the layup pick with Bijan Robinson. It's not terribly interesting, but around the 104, we're starting to get into these more interesting debates. We've seen CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson go off. Would you be taking Bryce Young here? Do you think that's a layup pick, or is there someone else that's taking your fancy?
Real quick, I do just want to say, to build on everything Rich just said, just picture the end of last year with Justin Fields. He was throwing 13 passes a game, but scoring 30 fantasy points a game because of the rushing. So just wanted to piggyback and just say, like, no, yes, you say you get pushback, but I'm here to push forward, whatever the opposite of that is. But I didn't realize that you were just a mouthpiece here. I thought you were also drafting with us. Okay, that's fine. I'll take pick 4 if you don't want it. And yeah, I'm going Young. He's good. And it makes me sad to not be able to draft Jaxon Smith-Njigba, which is kind of why I was hoping you were in here and I would get the 5 and I'd be able to go like, yeah, getting my guy, but it's fine. I'm not upset about it. With both Stroud and Young, I do think there's a more than good chance that they will walk in and they will be starters, especially because of the teams that need quarterbacks. And besides Chicago being at the 1, most of the teams up there do need quarterbacks. And there's no reason to not just put them out there, because we've seen these teams don't necessarily care if they hurt their quarterbacks by not having anyone to protect them. So I believe in Young as a player. I think he's very good. The teams he can go to need a quarterback, and short of the Texans, everyone up there has people to throw the ball to. And I think Young probably is the 2nd or 3rd quarterback drafted, depending on if one of those people up there do just get enamored with Richardson's athleticism. So just fingers crossed it's not the Texans. And anywhere else, I'm thrilled that he's going to go and start.
Yeah, I mean, even if he ends up on the Texans, a lot of mock drafts have Quentin Johnston landing there at their 2nd pick. So there's always a chance that they could be improved.
He's got Mechie reunited again.
So, Andrew, we're back to you with the 5th pick here. Is this how you see a lot of mock drafts are probably going to play out? And does anything about this kind of change what you'd be doing here? Or are you just straight in there with a pick that you've got lined up?
No, I mean, this is following exactly how I have these guys ranked. So good job, guys. Like, we're doing exactly what I want. This is exactly what people pay for. So, yeah, I'm going to go here with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I just think that I think that it's a teardrop between these quarterbacks and then the Will Levis, who I'm just much more. I mean, the first time I watched him, I was like, this guy looks a lot like Carson Wentz. So that kind of turned me off a little. That soured me a little bit, where I was like, okay, maybe I don't want to put him in the same echelon as these other players. Not to say he doesn't have some appeal about him, but I think it's a tier down. So I'm more than happy to dip into the skill position player here with the receiver. I mean, Smith-Njigba. Look, I know last year was a wash, but we've seen this before, with guys in their last years, either get hurt, they don't need to go out there and prove themselves. He already proved himself his sophomore year, and he was better than Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, like at least from a production standpoint. And I mean, that in itself has been one of the better indicators of just success. Like, okay, if he was in an offense with guys that we know are already good in the NFL and he was good, oh wait, then they're good in the NFL too. Like, I really don't think it's that much more complicated than that. And even when you're looking at the testing drills that he did, obviously didn't test in the 40, but it's the 3-cone. It's a 20-yard shuttle where he's just dominating the short area quickness, which is what he's going to do at the NFL. It's just like, he's not going to take screen passes 80 yards to the house. Instead, he's going to catch 8 passes on one drive, which is going to score more fantasy points anyway than an 80-yard pass would. So give me Smith-Njigba.
Are you guys concerned about the, should we say, trope that he's a slot only? Do you think that there's potential that he can play outside?
Do we remember reading or listening about Justin Jefferson? He was just a slot guy. Like, no, not in the least. Because especially having played with those other 2 guys there, yeah, he's going to get put in the slot because the other guys are older, have been there longer, and that's how college works. I mean, it doesn't really matter how good you are. They still care about seniority. And so, no, none whatsoever. Because honestly, Cooper Kupp's really good for fantasy and in the NFL. But, I think we need to just move on. Don't get me wrong. I'm a sucker for the prototypical X-body type wide receiver. I'm probably going to have a lot of Quentin Johnston, but give me this guy on my fantasy team all day long. I have zero concerns about it.
Right. Well, else you hear, folks, remember, drop us a like and hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment telling us which picks you like, which direction you'd be going if you were on the clock. Rich, what have you got for us? If this was a real draft, would you be happy here, or would you be starting to think, oh, maybe I can just move down slightly? There's a tier break in my rankings or anything?
I think if I was on the clock here, I'd be going to have a conversation with the person who's at the 107, because I've got 2 guys left in this kind of what I'm calling my second tier. but I think consensus only has one guy left. So I'd be very happy to move back one spot and pick up an extra asset. Even if it was literally a late second, I'd take that. But yeah, I'm going Jahmyr Gibbs here. I think any other normal year, there'd be so much hype about this guy. I think from a model perspective, he's basically a very different type of player, but an identical level prospect to Najee Harris, Kenneth Walker. Like, I really think he is a great prospect, but because he's in the same draft class as Bijan Robinson, he's kind of the forgotten man. I feel really happy about him. I think he's going to walk into the NFL as a borderline dynasty RB1 as a rookie. I think he's going to approach that top 12 kind of category, and you're getting him in the middle part of the first round. That feels pretty happy.
So, Russ, back to you here. Do you kind of agree with Rich, or do you feel like the tier break has now happened after Jahmyr Gibbs?
No, I got one more guy in there as well. And this is my pick, right? So I'm taking Jordan Addison. He is also in this tier for me. But I do agree, you have Bijan and the quarterbacks, and then you have these three guys, JSN, Gibbs, and Addison. That's another tier for me. I honestly, and just to put it out there, I don't care about landing spots for either of these wide receivers. They are good enough at everything they need to do to be able to fit into pretty much any scheme. I mean, thankfully, Baltimore is redoing their offense. We can't even say as long as they don't go to Baltimore, because we don't know what their offense is going to look like. So I'm really good with just about anywhere these guys land, because I believe in them that much. And Gibbs, everything Rich said is absolutely 100% correct. Like, if that guy lands in like Philly or Denver, which, I mean, sorry, Javonte, like, they will absolutely replace you because of injury. I just, you're right. He will walk in as a top 10 dynasty running back without stepping on a practice field, no less on like an NFL playing field. Like, he's good enough. He's young, and everyone else is old at this point. Like, we're like aging out of that 2017 class at this point, where it's just like, okay, well, now even Saquon and Chubb are old. Okay, so there goes 2018. Oh man, Miles Sanders and David Montgomery are on their second contracts. Oh, okay. And next year we're going to start calling DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor old. Like, it happens so fast. So yeah, like, Gibbs will absolutely walk in as a very top tier dynasty running back, and he deserves it. Like, I think he's that good.
Cool. So, Andrew, over to you. How are you feeling about this? We've seen 2 running backs go, 3 quarterbacks, and 2 wide receivers. Is there anyone that surprised you with where they're gone? Are you kind of feeling quite comfortable about this? Is it still in line with your rankings?
Yeah, it's pretty much to my rankings to a T. So you guys are just giving out all the secret sauce over at Fantasy Pros. But in the direction I'm going to go, so I'm definitely torn a little bit here. I don't think that there's like I have a couple guys closely ranked here. But I'm going to go with Zay Flowers from Boston College, wide receiver. When I first watched him, he looked exactly like Antonio Brown. And then I did more research, and I found out that he actually like trained with Antonio Brown, and he like specifically studied Antonio Brown's tape as he was like developing into a wide receiver. Like, oh yeah, like you can totally tell that that's his game that he tries to model off of. And obviously Antonio Brown isn't this, big size speed specimen, but the dude could just get open. And he's really not that small. He actually came in the combine like heavier than we expected. With most of these players, it's usually he's light. Like, what's going on? Oh, no, Zay Flowers like got yoked up. And as a former gym, like a hardcore gym goer, like I could appreciate bulking season from Zay Flowers. So that's what I'm going to go with here.
Give it an ideal landing spot for Zay Flowers. Is there somewhere where you'd move him ahead of Jordan Addison?
I think probably if he ended up somewhere like in my mock, actually, I had him going to the Buffalo Bills. So like if he ended up in that spot and Addison ended up going somewhere like lackluster, I mean, Stephon Diggs is getting a bit older. I mean, is Gabriel Davis the truth? Maybe not. So Zay Flowers with first round draft capital on Buffalo, catching passes from Josh Allen, for the next 10 years or so, or whatever, however it would be, like that would really be good for Flowers. And the way that Flowers is talked about, it seems like if he's going to go in the first round, probably the end of the first round, which means he has a chance to land on a good team. with a good quarterback versus some of these guys are going to go a little bit earlier.
Good stuff. Okay, Rich, back to you. How are you feeling about this draft? And, is this an area, you mentioned it before, there was a tier break. Are we kind of like staring at a real cliff edge for you in terms of the players here? And if you were going to trade out of the first round for 24 picks, what would you be looking for in this spot?
I think this is probably the point at which I'd consider moving any of these picks for a 24 first. I think, yes, there was a tier break. I think before that Zay Flowers pick, there's probably 4 or 5 guys that I've got in a level tier here. But look, it's Superflex. We've kind of let him fall. I kind of get it. But at this point, I've got to go with Will Levis. I think if I could just watch him from the waist up, I think he's the best quarterback in this draft. But his footwork is so poor and needs to basically be completely ripped up and started again. And that's where most of his inaccuracy comes from, is that he doesn't set his feet and his footwork is so inconsistent. Look, if he's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, this is an absolute steal at this value, because we've seen it time and time again. Quarterback evaluation in Dynasty is tough and we get it wrong. Josh Allen was going behind Josh Rosen and Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold in his rookie year, and we see it time and time again. I think if he's a early first round pick in the NFL draft, wherever he goes, he's going to be a value.
Can't argue with that. Russ, coming back to you now. We're getting towards the back end of round one. With this being tight end premium, do you feel like either of the tight ends, Dalton Kincaid or Michael Mayer, are creeping into this area where you'd be willing to draft them?
Me personally, probably not. People, yes, especially in a tight end premium, and especially if you have, the leagues I run are 0.75 premium, so it's a little chunkier than your average. Yes, 1,000%. But I already, first of all, if you did not take Levis, I would have stopped the slide as well, because everything you said is absolutely true. He's probably getting drafted in the top 5. And yes, he's not perfect. I'll be political right here, right now. He's not the perfect prospect, but he will still be a starting quarterback for a team where I kind of love that we're in the place now where, like, what happened to Zach Wilson can happen, where it's like, the teams don't feel trapped in this quarterback they drafted, even though they realize they're wrong, but you still have value insulation in that player on your dynasty team for like a good year and a half. So even if Levis looks, there's probably one person in your league that's a Levis person, and you could just be like, fine, like, give me equal value to what I drafted at and we'll call it a day. And you could probably get that done. But like I said before, sucker for Quentin Johnston, so I'm not going to pass up on that right now. He's going to be fun somewhere. Like, when I get bored and I need inspiration, I just look up highlights of his touchdowns, because like they're usually him jumping over 3 dudes, reaching his long arms around them and pulling the ball away from in front of the defender, and it's just ridiculous. Like, we're in the spot, like, I completely agree. After pick 7 is that tier where you better trade up to get your guy, because you have no idea who anyone's taking right here. Like, because this is really, Flowers went, Levis went, Quentin Johnston. Like, there's going to be someone who likes some of these quarterbacks, or, if Hyatt does get the ridiculous draft capital that fast guys usually get, he might go here. So it is a lot of fun to just A, try and trade up, or B, exactly what Rich was talking about before. If it's like everyone wants to go and get their guy, give me a 24 first and a 23 second, and I'll make the decision next year. Like, absolutely, that's fine. And cross my fingers it's early than the 210, the 110,
Are you concerned about the drops with Quentin Johnston? Obviously, more drops than touchdown catches this year.
I have been catching hundreds of balls a day to stop myself from body catching. Was an actual quote I read. So I'm like, he acknowledges and he's working on it. Like, remember, what was it, 2 years ago, or spring before Travis Etienne got drafted? He got misquoted a lot. Like, the quote that came out was, "I'm afraid of catching the ball," but that's not actually what he said. But like, more importantly, what he said was he's working on it. And I love how, Dynasty people, none of us are NFL scout. Well, I'm sure there's one or two. So like 99% of us are not actual or have never been NFL scouts. And we get to we say all these things like, oh, they can't do this, they can't do that. And that's cool that we get to try and say all of this stuff. But for the player themselves to be like, I body catch too much, I need to work on that. That's for someone of that competitiveness to be able to admit the fault and do nothing but work on it, like themselves. Like, I'm a big fan of that. So I'm behind Quentin Johnston, and whether it actually does come to fruition that he gets better at it or not, his play, his body type, and his willingness to admit the fault puts me a bigger fan of him than even I was before. So I'm taking Johnston here.
Yeah, it is really nice self-awareness to see something you don't always see. Andrew, coming back to you here, I know in your rookie rankings, you're a sizable amount ahead of consensus on FantasyPros on Jalin Hyatt. Is now too early for him, or is this kind of like where you'd be going to get your guy?
Well, I was hoping that I could sneak Jalin Hyatt to my next pick.
Yeah.
if he would fall to me. So with Hyatt, I think that, the disappointing 40 time, I think, has maybe soured some people, even though that I believe he said that he was dealing with some hamstring injury that he suffered on the first run or whatever. So I do think that if he runs again, Tennessee's pro day, that he could, light it up, especially if the pro day time is usually a little bit more lenient in terms of time for the prospects. So I'm actually not going to go with Jalin Hyatt here. I'm going to go with Zach Charbonnet, running back from UCLA. I think that, we've gone really chalk, I would say, in terms of the running back rankings with Bijan, Gibbs, and then Charbonnet. But I just think that Charbonnet has good size. He gets ball out of the backfield. I don't think that he is this otherworldly running back talent. But in terms of checking off the boxes of all right, he's big enough. He can catch passes. He's explosive enough, based on the drills. He's not a slug or a plotter, maybe a plotter plus. But that's good enough for me. If he finds his way into volume based on good draft capital, then he should be a productive running back for fantasy. Maybe not a guy that's a difference maker, but someone that has stretches of really great fantasy production. It's Charbonnet, he's averaging 20 touches per game. He can handle that kind of workload. So I think that he is the clear RB3 in this class. And depending on landing spot, I wouldn't be surprised me at all if he sees, earlier production, even someone like Gibbs, where Gibbs is, okay, a lot of it's going to be because of the receiving. Okay, how quickly do they get him involved in the receiving game? Where Charbonnet comes in, I'm the lead back because I beat out, XYZ on the depth chart. So I'm going to go with Charbonnet.
Good stuff. Okay, Rich, last pick of round one. Anything kind of spicy that you've got for us here, or anything stand out?
I don't think it's spicy, no, but I'm going to maybe let Andrew live on in hope that Jalin Hyatt falls to him in the next round. Because I'm going to go Josh Downs here. I think there's a lot of people that he almost feels a bit like the forgotten man. There's all the hype of Addison, JSN. Then you've got Hyatt's the speed guy, Quentin Johnston's the big guy, Kayshon Boutte's the kind of former star that's dwindled, shall we say? And Josh Downs is just hyper productive. Great route runner, from an analytical perspective, ticks a lot of boxes, elite receiving yards per team pass attempt, good breakout age, elite total touchdowns per game, ticks all these boxes that I'm looking for, and is probably going to get early day 2 draft capital, but nobody seems to want to talk about him because he's just kind of a bit of a, solid, safe, unsexy pick. And I think if I've got a late first, early seconds, and I'm getting him, I'm delighted every single time.
Good stuff. Right, before we move on to round 2, 55% of you watching this aren't subscribed. Put a smile on my face, hit that subscribe button. We have so much Dynasty Best Ball redraft content coming your way this year. Russ, back to you. Before I get your first pick of the second round, what are your kind of feelings on the first round and how it played out?
I'm angry that Charbonnet did not fall to me. But otherwise, I'm good. This is very much what I feel the first round will look like, more or less. I think all of us have very similar tiers. We have all the same players in a lot of our similar tiers. So, and I completely agree. It's really funny how when this rookie class first started getting talked about, well, Devy people have been talking for years, but by the end of the season in like February or January, Josh Downs was talked about a lot. And I think it's not even that people have forgotten about him. They're just like, yeah, he's good. End of the first, it's fine. And we're waiting to see if an NFL team goes and drafts him ahead or way later for us to like double down and say how we feel about him again. Like, because you're right. Josh Downs was talked about a lot for a while and then kind of forgot he existed until you said his name again. But like, he does seem like that end of the first round completely safe pick. And like you said, you feel good about it too, which is wonderful for the end of the first. All right, so we ready for my
fire away.
I can now officially say I love this. I love the psychology that the 112 and the 201 are so completely different because one is a first round pick, one is a second round pick, completely ignoring that they are one pick away from each other. But it's not the first round anymore, so I'm taking my tight end, and I'm going to take Michael Mayer, especially in a tight end premium league. Of course, a lot of it's going to come into who's the first tight end drafted, who gets drafted to the better place, because we saw a lot of really athletic tight ends. But Michael Mayer has been coming in with the hype for a while now, so I'm willing to believe that enough NFL teams are lazy that they're just like, oh yeah, we heard that Mayer kid's good, we're just going to take him. So if he is the first tight end drafted, and if it happens in the first 2 rounds, I'm in, especially if he goes to a good landing spot, which there aren't that many great tight ends in the league. So there's plenty of good landing spots. And he's good. So I'd be happy, especially with a premium, to just grab him at the 201.
I also think he's going to be one of these only rookie tight ends coming in that can be on the field 100% of the time. I've got no concerns, whether Kincaid or one of the other guys you think are going to have to come off in certain situations. He is a true white tight end, can be on the field 100% of the time, no questions asked.
Good stuff. Okay, Andrew, moving on to your second pick, your first second round pick even. In your rookie drafts, do you tend to have areas of a draft where you're targeting particular archetypes of players, or are you just best player available at all times?
It's probably a mix between the two. I think that also depends on like what your roster needs at this point too. When you're going into the second round, it's like, do you need like a steady body? I mean, most of the time it's probably going to be best player available, looking for the most upside, because this is kind of where we're entering. Okay, like we're just kind of taking shots at the dartboard here. This is an area where I'm not going to probably try to look to draft guys that don't have something like at least one special trait about them, where it's like, okay, like he's kind of well-rounded. He's like well-rounded. It's like, well, why am I taking him in like the second round? Like, well, I can just wait to take a well-rounded guy that, a little bit later on, maybe someone that has, again, like looking for like something that's a special trait. So for me, I'm going to go with Jalin Hyatt here, who is still available on the board. Shout out to you guys. Appreciate it. I think that the 4.41 is a mirage. I think that he can run faster than that. And a lot of it's going to probably change. Like I'm interested to see where he goes in the NFL draft, because he's really hyped up kind of like before the combine, maybe wasn't as good because he didn't run under a 4.4, even though his jumping drills were really good in terms of explosiveness. So we'll see. Usually teams just salivate over speed, even though time and time again, it's like you could just draft a fast guy in like the 5th round. And like that's a way better allocation of draft capital. And I agree with that. If I was a real GM, like drafting Jalin Hyatt in round 1 would not be how I would dedicate my resources. I would instead draft Trey Palmer or someone like that, later on, because he's fast too. So, but for right now, I think Hyatt does get good draft capital, should see the field, and he can obviously deliver splash plays.
Good stuff. Okay, Rich, what's your kind of ethos with players falling past ADP? Like, how often are you going to scoop projected value versus ADP, or do you just stick to your rankings over time?
That's a really tough question to answer. I tend to stick to my rankings for what I believe is best player available. If there's a player falling in a rookie draft, there's the thought process of I could grab him, scoop up some value, and then trade him. But the truth is that if he's falling a long way past ADP, everybody else in your league is probably letting him fall for a specific reason. So you being the guy going, oh, I'm going to go and get this guy and then trade him, everybody's probably let him fall for a reason. So yeah, I think you can kind of get yourself into a sticky situation if you're doing that. For me, I believe in my process. I believe in my rankings. So I'm generally just going to go best player available that I've got on the board.
And in this pick here, who's the best player available for you?
So for me, it's Devon Achane. Look, second round, I'm looking as much upside as possible, and his upside is higher than anybody else in this tier by a long way, as far as I'm concerned. Analytically, he's elite. He ticks so many boxes in terms of, receiving market share, yards per team rush attempt, weight adjusted speed score, all the numbers that I'm looking at. He's probably going to get early day 2 draft capital. Yes, there are some serious concerns about the size. I don't think he's going to be able to carry the ball between the tackles 5-10 times a game. But, if he can get 5 to 10 carries and 6, 7, 8 targets a game, those 18 touches for me are going to be enough for him to be fantasy relevant. And an early second round pick, I'm really happy to just go with the upside of someone like Achane, who every time he touches the ball, it could go to the house.
Good stuff. Okay, Russ, so we're at a point in the draft here, 2.4. Is this an area of the draft you like this year? Or having listened to your latest Trade Addicts podcast, is this an area where you try to ship this pick for Calvin Ridley?
Oh, all right. Well, when you put that in there, yeah, you give me Calvin all day. Give me Calvin. But I love this area of the draft. I have my beautiful T. Higgins signed jersey poster thing with a bunch of his cards over here. Like, in a stacked draft like this, you get great players in the beginning of the second. Like in 2020, you were getting Pittman and Higgins at the 201, 202 almost every single draft, and it was wonderful. And you're still like exactly like everything. I threw my hands in the air when Achane was just taken because it's like, really, come on, just like let me draft. I get that I got Bijan and I had the easy pick once, but like I think every single time after that, the guy I want went before me. But I'm always about, it's always about the offer you get. So if we're here and like my pick's going to be Marvin Mims, I think he's Jalin Hyatt. I like him. He's fast. He's a good catcher. And I think he has the ability to be drafted in the second round and probably walk right into a team and get on the field.
I'm really annoyed, A, because you've just stolen Marvin Mims, but B, because I thought a month ago that I was going to end up with loads of shares of Marvin Mims at the beginning of the third round because nobody was talking about him. And then he goes and has this fantastic combine. And all of a sudden, he's jumped like a round in ADP and everybody's talking about it. And I'm like, it's going to happen again. I'm going to miss out on him.
Okay, Andrew, I mean, we've been talking about it. It's kind of that point in the draft where you've got to just really get the guys who you want. Is there a player who really stands out for you here?
Yes, I'm going to go with another running back here with size, and that's Kendre Miller from TCU. I think that this is kind of looking at, okay, what traits does this guy have? 5'11", 215 pounds. Like, there's just not a lot of running backs that are left that have that type of size. Like, a lot of these running backs are, we have guys in this class that are like sub 190 pounds. We have guys that are under 5'6". Like, we have a lot of small, as it's been depicted on social media, like Mickey Mouse sized type players. So Kendre Miller, I know that he didn't test, but the size is there for him, and that's honestly enough for me in the middle of the second round. If he stumbles into a job somewhere, gets touches, okay, boom, you're seeing a guy that gets value. So maybe he's not even someone I keep long term, but hey, he sees a couple weeks as a starter because the starter gets hurt, flip him, boom.
Good stuff. Okay, Rich, moving on to you next. Anyone stand out here?
Yeah, so I'm a guy that basically never drafts tight ends in rookie drafts because I think that 9 times out of 10 they take time to appreciate in value and return on the investment. But by the middle of the second round, my tight end one's still on the board. I'm going Dalton Kincaid. I think that he's the best receiving tight end in the league. I really hope whoever drafts him with a plan, because I think that he could be a fantastic second weapon as a receiver for pretty much any NFL team. I worry that there is the chance that we see a Mike Gesicki type situation where he needs to play out the slot 80, 90% of the time. So if there's a change in scheme, he's suddenly only a 40% snap share guy. But I'm going to trust that whoever's drafting him is drafting him and spending that elite draft capital for a reason, because they want to use him correctly. And yeah, at this point, I've got to go with him.
Okay, good stuff. So, Russ, coming back to yourself with a 2-7, at this point in a draft, I mean, I'm guessing you're in plenty of leagues like most of us are. Do you start to get to a point where if you've got several picks in this range, that you start to look at diversifying your portfolio a little bit and taking shots on players who you might not normally be picking, just to try and not miss out on them?
Okay, so it's really funny that you use those two phrases in the same question, because I don't play in enough leagues to consider portfolio whatsoever. Like, I mean, I'm in 20 leagues. That's more than the average for sure, but I could be 100% on T. Higgins and I'd be thrilled about it. Like, I don't think of it as a portfolio play. Like, I go after the players I like or believe in or whatever. But I also do, like, I call them just in case shares. Like, I want to have at least one share of just about every player, just in case they're awesome. So kind of, but at this point in the draft, I'm probably still sticking to the guys I want. And if I start hearing things, I start feeling rumblings, I'll go and try and trade for them a little later. But like right now, again, I'm super annoyed that Kendre Miller went in between my last pick and this one, because that was kind of my hopes for this. But yeah, like now is when I was just like, I would definitely be like, Calvin Ridley, you got some Calvin Ridley for me? You got some Calvin Ridley? Like, here is a place that there are still a lot of flag planting players on here, and I'm probably going to go with mine. So it might be a very easy way to trade out of here. Again, like what I said before, get a 24 second and a 23 third. It doesn't take much to trade out in areas like this. And I get it. Kayshon Boutte just really did not test well. And he
tested like booty. Come on. You just say it.
Boutte makes me feel so fancy that I love it. It's Boutte. So like, I am like the Arizona Cardinals. I love this when I realized what they do. Arizona Cardinals feel like Devy players who can't give up on their takes. They draft Rondale Moore, Eno Benjamin, and there's like one or two others where they're guys that the Devy community was super in on, and then sort of just started to fade on their last year in college. But the Cardinals don't care. They're just like, we liked this guy. Okay, he looked bad his last year, but we're still going to believe in that player. I mean, it worked a little bit for Eno Benjamin, right? Like he did well. Of course, it was like his third year and for like 6 games, but it worked. Kayshon Boutte is good. His draft stock will fall. So honestly, you might not have to take him here if you don't want to, but I want to because I like the player.
I think that's definitely going to be the way it is with Boutte. It's like, there's an upside case you can make for him, but if he falls into even day 3, it's going to be very tricky. Andrew, down to your last couple of picks here. Any player leaping off the page for you?
Yeah, just one thing on Boutte. I am terrified that he has a Justin Ross-esque type of fall. And, I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe it'll still work out for Justin Ross. He's on the Chiefs, after all. So,
good for Justin still being in the league. All right, okay.
On that comment, shout to Jack Brentnell, who came on the show a month ago and called the fall for Boutte that he was going to be a day 3, if not undrafted player a month ago. So, yeah, if that does happen, he deserves all the credit for seeing it before all of us.
Undrafted, that would hurt my soul a bit.
That would crush a lot of people. All right. So with my pick here, I'm going to go back to, I'm just going to keep drafting running backs, honestly. I'm going to go with Zach Evans here. I know that he came in a little bit lighter than I would have hoped after being listed. I think more around that 215 area. He came in, I think, just over 200 pounds. So I didn't like to see, but he and Kendre Miller, they shared a backfield together at one point. So chances are one of them's good. Like, and that's kind of banking on here. Like, I'm willing to miss on one guy to hit on the other. I think that's kind of a strategy here to hedge a little bit between, because you're not going to hit all your rookie picks. I've yet to meet anybody that's hit on all the rookie picks. So it's like, hey, some of these guys are going to bust, but if this guy busts, probably means the other guy's probably pretty good. So take 2 former teammates at running back. I like their profiles too. Very efficient in terms of yards per play, which I think stands out a lot for running backs. So I'm going to go with Zach Evans here.
Oh, by the way, Keontae Ingram and Hakeem Butler were the 2 guys I couldn't think of before, who were like Devi darlings for a little bit, and then all of a sudden they're like, maybe not so much, but the Cardinals didn't care.
Was Andy Isabella a Devi darling as well?
Yeah, but I don't think there were illusions of him being a wide receiver 1 at some point.
Right.
I think we just loved the thinking about him going to the Patriots so much that like it seemed like he was liked a lot more than he was.
Okay, former Raven Andy Isabella at this point in his career now. Rich, you've got one more pick after this one. Is there anyone really standing out to you who you like in this area of the draft?
Yeah, I had a little bit of a panic when Andrew said he was going to take running back. I thought he was going to take my guy. But I'm going to go Sean Tucker here. Crazy fast. Look, at this point, I'm basically going for volume-based positions. So I'm basically drafting running backs, quarterbacks, because I think the chances of a receiver hitting and becoming a reliable fantasy option are slim. So yeah, give me Sean Tucker. Ticks a lot of boxes analytically. Really interesting athlete. Fascinated to see what he runs at his pro day. The fact that he didn't run at the combine. So he could be a really, really good tester at his pro day, and I think that could see him sneak up some draft boards.
Okay, and Russ, on your last pick of the draft, your last chance to bang the table for a player here. Is this the kind of point where you might sneak in a Hendon Hooker type pick, or is that someone that's not really on your draft board?
There are 4 players I am panicking about, only because it's my last pick in this thing. Like if we were going on, I'd be like, all right. And Hooker is one of them for exactly what Rich just said. Like he's a quarterback, and a second round isn't a bad place to get a guy who, like, imagine it's the worst thing to do to, equate to outliers, but like imagine getting Hurts at the end of the second. Like, yeah, he was a second round quarterback, but it could happen, sure. But I'm not going to do that. Another one I thought about was Tyjae Spears, because there was that wonderful, wonderful hype around, like Senior Bowl practice sort of thing. And then I'm stuck between, you know what? No, I was such a big Jerick McKinnon fan, and his 7th year-ish breakout gives me hope. And I'm going to take Roschon Johnson and hope it takes him less than 7 years to break out. And honestly, just making it because they were quarterbacks that ended up being running backs. That's really the only thing connecting them. Not like they're super similar in general, but this is 100% upside play. End of the second, you're probably talking tens of percentages of hit rate at this point. So you might as well go for the guy that has the chance of hitting big. And I think that's where that's at right now.
Good stuff. Andrew, on to you for your last pick.
Let's take a dive into the tight end pool here. It is tight end premium after all, so I'm ready to dip my toes. And what better way to do that than with the 6'7", 264-pound pterodactyl Darnell Washington from Georgia. His numbers are horrible, but if he's going to get a top 50 draft slot, I don't care. Like the tight end, what we see in college, the numbers are, it matters and it doesn't matter. Like we see guys put up stats, we see guys don't put up stats, and it just depends on what team they go to. It's so team dependent. And one thing that does matter though is this guy athletic? Like that really helps a lot with tight ends, because you see guys like Dalton Schultz, Austin Hooper. Yes, they have these seasons where they just stumble into a lot of production because they just get a lot of volume. But the true difference makers are the guys that can make plays with the ball in their hands, have athleticism, and can break tackles. And Darnell Washington kind of checks off all the boxes when it comes to that. So if a team's going to invest highly in him, I think they'll probably try to use him more as a receiver. My fear is that he goes to a team and they're just like, you know what? You're such a good blocker that you're going to, but I'm going to know that from the start. Like whatever team he goes to, I'm like, you're what? Yeah, he's off my list totally. Like there's no way they're going to use him as a receiver. Like get out of here. versus, oh, this team is just like airing it out with these tight ends before, maybe with a coach that we've seen use tight ends kind of more in a mismatch type of way. So that's why I think Washington is a guy that very dependent on where he ends up going, but it's pretty obvious to see that he has a pretty high ceiling, I would say, just based on his athletic profile. And I think at the end of the second round in a tight end premium, I think it's worth taking the shot on a guy like him.
Okay, and over to you, Rich, for your last one. We've seen 4 quarterbacks go, 3 tight ends. Either of those positions standing out, or are you going back to running back or wide receiver wells?
Now let's go with quarterback. I think, Hendon Hooker, it was very telling, I thought, watching the combine, how many times Daniel Jeremiah said Hendon Hooker's a starter in this league. And that's a guy that is obviously incredibly plugged in, having an awful lot of conversations with front offices. And I think that, yeah, he's obviously got the injury that he's still recovering from, and he's probably not going to start year one. But if an NFL team's going to take him round 2, round 3, I think there's a chance that he could be, the steal of this draft, like Russ was saying about Jalen Hurts, potentially Jordan Love. Those are guys you might have to hold him for a little bit longer. But the potential return, if he becomes a starting quarterback in the NFL, he's immediately worth a first-round pick in Superflex drafts. And, if I can get that at the back end of the second rounds, that's too good a value to pass up for me right now.
Okay, brilliant. That's draft done and dusted. Russ, looking back at it now, how do you feel about your picks? Is there any particular players that are left on the board who you'd be dying to draft if you got straight onto another pick in the 3rd round?
Oh, I like all the players. Like, this to me would be a beautiful draft to look at. Like, I think it has the perfect combination of chalk where it should be and the groups of players that, like I said before, like the players that people want, in the places those should be also. So, like, to me, this is a wonderful draft. I'm very happy with the players I took, except if I can get a guy named Tank on my team, he would be my next pick. Like I said before, I didn't even get to finish my sentence because I'm like, I'm going to take Roschon Johnson and no, I'm taking Roschon over Tank Bigsby. And especially because the next round in the 4th, I'm taking, is it Tank Dell, the wide receiver? So if I can get 2 guys named Tank on my team, I mean,
they can't both be bad. It's impossible.
But of course, I want to win the league.
2
but
tanks cancel it out.
I'll feel like a winner already because I have 2 guys named Tank on my team.
Brilliant. Okay, Andrew, any players left standing or any picks that you feel really pleased about in particular?
I think that if I had to go in a certain direction, I think Tyjae Spears is probably one of the guys that stands out to me. I know that he's kind of like been hype machine at the Senior Bowl, hype machine during the Combine. And I think he's been someone that's kind of been a darling in the real NFL draft community at the running back position. So I think he's going to go in the top 100 picks, which is really good draft capital for a running back, especially nowadays. So I think Tyjae Spears would probably be someone I would try to gravitate towards here with my first pick in the 3rd round. And to highlight too, like, there's still a lot of good tight ends. Like, this tight end class is really good. And I know that rookie tight ends traditionally haven't hit, but even look at last year, guys like Cade Otton, the guy on the Giants whose name is escaping me.
Bellinger.
Yeah, Bellinger. Like, none of these guys weren't touted as this guy's going to be a monster. It's like these guys were playing legitimate snaps for real NFL offenses, and we're like, hey, I got to plug and play some guy this week. And we weren't even looking at these guys really in any sort of way. So I think that the college game is really developing these tight ends a little bit more than I think the market is maybe catching up to. So, I mean, if you can get a guy like Sam Laporta, Luke Musgrave, there's Zach Kuntz, the most athletically gifted tight end we've ever seen test at the Combine, former Penn State recruit. There's a lot of upside that you can get in tight end premium late, where you don't have to spend a pick. If you don't want to spend Michael Mayer in the 2nd round or Kincaid or even Darnell Washington, if you want to just wait, hey, I think that any of these tight ends could hit later on. There's a lot of value, I think, in the later rounds, even in tight end premium.
No, I completely agree with you. I think the market's definitely slow to pick up on tight ends. You look at Chigozie Okonkwo last year, who came on and had an incredible end of the season. Yep. Greg Dulcich, if injuries hadn't marred his season, could have been a really big player throughout. Rich, just quickly, anything from you on this? We've done a few of these mocks. Anything standing out post-combine that you weren't expecting?
No, I think, as Russ said, it was kind of chalk to begin with. And then the guys that have got the upside that you'd expect to kind of take flyers on are the guys that went. So yeah, it went as expected. 2 guys, I guess, left on the board that I'd love. So Rashee Rice, I think he's probably the one wide receiver I'd feel comfortable drafting in this round. I think there's an awful lot of talent in there. I think he's going to need some molding at the next level, but this is a really small class of wide receivers. He's, 6'1", built well. He could take a little bit of time, but he could be a star after year 2, year 3. And then Deuce Vaughn, I get he's small. I get he's absolutely tiny in terms of height, but really productive. And I think that the floor on him is good, solid third down back. And the ceiling is, there's potential of could he sneak into a, I'm not saying he's going to be Austin Eckler, but an Austin Eckler type role where he can, have 150 to 200 carries, 80 targets. That's within the range of possibilities for him. But I do appreciate he is tiny, so the NFL is probably not going to draft him too highly.
Okay, so Russ, really glad we managed to get you on here. It was really great to hear your thoughts. I mean, such a great person when it ear to the ground with the Dynasty. You're a busy man. Anything you'd like to tell the viewers about before you get out of here?
DLF is awesome. Go read, listen, watch everything on DLF. Thank you guys. Send the check to my house. Also, check out fantasycares.org. Go donate. We are also doing a March roster challenge, I think we're calling it these days. With every donation, you can get a gift entry into a roster challenge where score the most throughout the season and you win prizes, because prizes are always fun. So check that out too.
Brilliant. And Andrew, I mean, I know as well as anyone, like Fantasy Pros, it's just non-stop at the minute. I think I've got 17 articles coming out on there this month. Anything in particular you'd like to plug going on over there?
No, not right now. Just getting more into more off-season content. Obviously, free agency is coming up next week. So just going to be doing a lot of live coverage, a lot of live recaps from the free agency frenzy, which is obviously going to cause a shakeup in terms of mock drafts, what NFL teams need, what direction they're going in. So we're going to see some quarterback movement. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be a Jet? What's going on? So a lot of implications, but it's so much fun, and of course it's going to be last year it was Chase Edmonds. He broke the free agency seal. So I'm very interested to see which player does it this year and if it's a good sign or not. Because obviously Chase Edmonds, pour one out for the guy, just did not work out in his favor there in Miami. But Miami's back in the RB market again. So we'll see how the dollars they spend go into running back and if it's worth chasing or not.
What a note to end on. Well, this was Fantasy Sanctuary. Leave us a like and a comment. Make sure you subscribe. We'll be back soon with lots more rookie content, Dynasty, and Best Ball. Thanks so much for watching.